This is the side event titled Japan-India Cooperation for the Development of Africa. This program is co-organized by Japan Bank for International Cooperation, JBIC, Japan External Trade Organization, JETRO, Japan International Cooperation Agency, JICA, and the African Development Bank. My name is Tadashi Yokoyama, Head of ASEAN Representation Office, ASEAN Development Bank, located in Tokyo, Japan. I'm today's Master of Ceremony. Indian and Japanese private companies are exploring more business and investment opportunities with Africa. They are potentially greater simulators of economic growth of Africa, but how to do it in better and equitable manner is still an open-ended question. Therefore, today's our purpose is how to enhance partnership between Japan and India on the development of African economy, and also how to enhance business in Africa through the cooperation of Japanese and Indian companies to contribute to the inclusive and sustainable development of Africa. We hope that this joint side event will help particularly the private sector of Japan, India, as well as Africa to improve their own business and eventually improve African economy as a whole. For the opening of this side event, we have great speakers from the government of Japan, the government of India, and also from our bank. This high-level engagement shows the importance of today's agenda. Now, we would like to introduce Honorable Mr. Taku Otsuka, Minister of Finance of Japan. State Minister, Mr. Otsuka, please come forward to the podium.
Good morning. My name is Taku Otsuka, and the State Minister of Finance in Japan. And the Honorable Arjun Ram Meghwal, Minister of State for Finance in India, Mr. Pierre Gislan, Vice President of the African Development Bank Group, Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great pleasure for me to speak at the opening session of this Japan ADB Forum on behalf of the Government of Japan. First of all, I'd like to take this opportunity to express my highest respect for all the participants here in this room who are working very hard toward development in Africa. Today, we are discussing Japan-India cooperation for the development of Africa. As Prime Minister Modi touched upon at the opening ceremony yesterday, Japan and India have been enhancing partnership for the development of Africa. Now we are jointly developing the Asia-Africa Growth Corridor vision to make Asia-Africa global growth center that is inclusive and open to the world. So this forum is a very timely opportunity to deepen discussion on this issue with participants from Japan, India, and Africa. Now I'd like to share with you my thoughts about how Japan-India cooperation can bring prosperity to Africa. In recent years, Japan is scaling up its effort towards African development. At the TICAD 6 last August, Japan pledged to strengthen its support for Africa, particularly in promoting quality infrastructure investment. A growing number of Japanese enterprises with technological edge and effective project management skills are keen to expand their business into rapidly growing African markets. On the other hand, many Japanese businesses feel that their stock of knowledge and network on the continent are yet to be developed. That's why we need to partner with India. India is not only geographically closer to Africa, it also enjoys deep human and economic ties with Africa stretching over centuries. Building on these assets, India is further strengthening its relationship with Africa. These efforts include holding the India-Africa Forum Summit in New Delhi in 2015, and of course, hosting this annual meeting here in Ahmedabad. Given the Given the ties India has in Africa and Japan's edge in technology and expertise, I believe that enhanced cooperation between Japan and India can create significant synergies. Japan, with an excellent track record of assisting development, and India, with its first-hand experience in its own domestic development, when we join our strengths together, we can bring solutions to make challenges of Africa. This is virtuous cycle, which I named the win-win-win triangle. I'm confident that lively and productive discussion in today's forum will lead a stronger collaboration between Japan and India, boosting further development of Africa. I sincerely hope that we can make a giant step towards realizing the win-win-win triangle together. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, State Minister. Our next speaker is Honorable Mr. Shri Arjun Ram Meghwal, Minister of State for Finance of India. Minister of State, Mr. Meghwal, please come forward to the podium.
Good morning, everybody. Japan-India cooperations for the development of Africa is the heading of the today's meeting. His Excellency, Mr. Taku Otsuka, State Minister of Finance of the Government of Japan, Mr. Pierre Gouslain, Vice President for Private Sector Infrastructure and Industrializations of African Development Bank, African dignitaries and leaders, my brothers and sisters from Africa and Japan, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is my distinct honor to speak here at India-Japan initiative on connectivity in Africa. We witnessed yesterday the inauguration of the first ever annual meeting of the African Development Bank held in India. This is also the first time that the annual meeting of African Development Bank is being held in a non-African members country. We are making history. Ladies and gentlemen, last year in November, Prime Minister Modi and Prime Minister Abe had underscored the potential of collaborations in Africa. The leaders wanted India and Japan to synergize their efforts and explore specific joint projects, including in the areas of training and capacity building, health, infrastructure, and connectivity. Since then, senior officials have been working hard to explore ways to improve connectivity between Asia and Africa. We have a shared vision of free and open Indo-Pacific region. This is a vital to achieving prosperity of entire region. With this in mind, we are seeking synergies between India's Act Asia policy and Japan's expanded partnerships for quality infrastructure by closely coordinating bilaterally. We want to work with other partners, especially African countries, for better regional integration and improved connectivity as well as industrial networks. For years, India and Japan have been sharing experience of development, cooperation in Africa. Japan has several decades of working through its decade process, while India has had long-standing links with the African continent, defined by its geography and historical development. The Indian engagement with Africa has also taken the shape of the Indo-Africa Forum Summit at the continent level. Today, this is the first India-Japan event on connectivity. This is a fulfillment of the promise that we have been making to each other for several years. Friends, in last 18th month, we have enhanced our engagement with Africa. Yesterday, our Prime Minister has mentioned that Prime Minister of India, President of India and Vice President of India visited most of the countries in Africa. These visits underline the political capital being invested by both Indians and African political leadership. Regular consultation is the new normal for India-Africa cooperation. My brothers and sisters, India's model of cooperation with Africa is unique. For us, the bonds between our countries, our continents are deeply personal. We want to build genuine partnership that creates jobs and opportunity for all of our peoples. We have committed to 600 dollar US dollar millions in development assistance over a period of 5 years under the India Africa Forum Summit process. Last year, out of aid to Africa was over US $125 million. India has supported development in Africa through lines of credit, estimated over 8.84 US dollar billion under IAFS process, from power plant to irrigation projects, from sugar factory to water supply system, from solar energy to supporting small and medium enterprises. These cover about 126 projects across 41 African countries. As we move ahead, we look forward to working with African partners to explore projects which support physical and digital connectivity. We believe that projects should bring greater economic benefits to all in equitable and balanced manner. We would share with our African brothers our experience in successful schemes like Aadhaar and Jan Dhan. These would unleash the possibility of digital technology to transform the development process. We recognize Africa for its greatest resources, which its people and its talent and their potential. It is with this in mind that we decided to offer 50,000 scholarships to Africans. 6,000 Africans have since trained under IAFS 3. We see these as change agents, doctors, accountants, finance experts, technicians, civil servants, solar moms, energy experts, and engineers. They will connect us now more than ever. Ladies and gentlemen, there certainly exists complementaries in the Japanese and Indians development outreach model which possibly can be employed together for larger benefits. India and Japan are seen as a valued development partners in Africa and also in other parts of Asia, with no covert intentions. Asia-Africa Growth Corridor would be an apt platform to pool resources for a common vision shared by both countries. India and Japan together would cooperate to promote the development of industrial corridor and industrial network in Asia and Africa. I am confident that the Asia-Africa Growth Corridor would lead to connecting Asia and Africa with a view to expand trade, supports investment, and help forge lasting people-to-people relationship. It is these which will help propel our relations in 21st century. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister of State. Then our last speaker of opening session is Vice President of African Development Bank, Mr. Pierre Guesman, in charge of private sector, infrastructure, and industrialization. Vice President, please.
Good morning, everyone. Honorable Mr. Taku Otsuka, State Minister of Finance of Japan. Honorable Mr. Sri Arjun Ram Meghwal, Minister of State for Finance of India. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I'm delighted to deliver my opening remarks here today at this joint side event organized by JBIC, JETRO, JICA, and the African Development Bank. As one of the co-organizers of this joint event, I would like to warmly welcome all participants here. The President of the African Development Bank, Dr. Akinwumi Adesina, visited India last March and met many business leaders of India. He said to business leaders that the African Development Bank was looking for partners who would help the bank deliver its high five priority development agenda, which is Light Up and Power Africa, Feed Africa, Industrialize Africa, Integrate Africa, and improve the quality of life for the people of Africa. These priorities are the core for unlocking the huge development opportunities that lie in Africa, backed by abundant natural and mineral resources, renewable energy, human resources, and business opportunities. To achieve this tremendous potential that we're trying to summarize under this high five agenda, in order to achieve these goals, the private sector needs to play a critical, pivotal role. For sustainable development to happen in Africa, we need vigorous and continuous investment flow and involvement of the private sector. This is absolutely critical. Private sector, not only the local private sector, but also the international private sector. And here in particular, the opportunity to draw on the experience, the knowledge, and the track record of Japan and Indian private companies. For this purpose, the domestic private sector needs to be supported in each African country. They are incipient. Many of the African countries have reasonably small markets. If you look at it, 1.2 million people, 54 countries, 5 of the largest countries, 500 million. That means that for the 49 other countries, 700 million people, on average 14 million people per market. It is too small. We need to help these small markets open up to the world, open up to each other, and open up to international investment, kind of learn from the experience and the expertise that other companies and other investors can bring, in particular from Japan and India, as we are discussing here today. So foreign investment is absolutely critical to help grow Africa and to form true and lasting partnerships that will contribute to the development and the prosperity of the continent. Historically, the Indian private sector has been working very closely with Africa. We find so many African Indian businesses communities in different countries working as important drivers of those economies. Also, the Japanese private sector has gradually but steadily been coming to Africa and started working with Africa. If Indian and Japanese investors work together and help the African private sector to grow, all parties can grow together. Of course, we very much welcome investment and business coming either from India or Japan by themselves. But this event and further opportunities are also an opportunity to see how joint investment opportunities and joint partnerships between Japan, India, and Africa or African countries can in itself, in some instances, deliver even bigger impact and more results. So we believe that this private sector cooperation between Japanese, Indian, and African businesses should be further explored and developed. And in that context, we see the African Development Bank as your partner. We are African, we are based in Africa, we have African and external shareholders, including Japan and India, and we are your partner of choice to connect with African businesses, to connect with African governments. And we're proud of that, and we really want to intensify that. We also want to acknowledge the support we have received to date, both from Japan and from India, in terms of facilitating some of these activities, in terms of extra financing that you provide to help us support our African client countries. So today, this joint side event will discuss how this cooperation can support further development of Africa and its private sector. It is important to heighten the momentum of the Japan-India partnership in Ahmedabad, and I would welcome and like to express our willingness to promote such partnership, India, Japan, Africa. And Africa, of course, is not one country, it is multiple countries. So these partnerships will take different shapes with different countries, different regions of Africa, and possibly the continent as a whole. Finally, I would like to encourage private sector participants to pursue further business opportunities with Africa through Japan-India partnership, through partnership with the African Development Bank. As you know, or don't know, the African Development Bank lends both to governments, African governments, but also to private sector. About 25% of our activity at the African Development Bank is to provide loans and sometimes even equity to private companies and investment. And if this is the one part of our business that has grown reasonably rapidly. We were less than 10% of our business was private sector support like 10 or 12 years ago. This year, it will be 30%. And so it has been a fast-growing business. We plan to intensify it, and we plan to do it in strong partnership with international business associations, Exim banks, and other partners and governments that are willing to support us in helping the African private sector become a major driver of growth and prosperity for Africa. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vice President. Before going to the session one, we'd like to have a short photo session. So three honorable speakers, would you mind coming up to the stage for photo session? To State Minister of India, State Minister of Japan, and Vice President.
Companies.
But it's mostly...
Is it okay? Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, honorable speakers, for great speeches. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Now, I'd like to move to session one. The session will discuss about Japan-India partnership on African development with key message of how can we collaborate among partnership on African development, collaborate among Japan, India, and Africa, sorry. I would like to express my deep appreciation to JICA for preparing for this session. Then I'd like to introduce Mr. Simel Gray-Johnson, Head of Partnerships, Regional Integration Infrastructure and Trade Program, NEPAT, Planning and Coordination Agency, as a moderator of the session. Mr. Gray-Johnson, please.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Sumer, and I'll be moderating this session. I'd like to invite panelists to the podium. I'll start off with Ms. Dr. Takao Toda, Vice President in charge of TICAD, JICA. Please welcome to the podium, Dr. Toda. You can sit right there. Thank you. And next, I will be inviting Mr. Moriyuki Aida, Executive Officer for Europe, the Middle East, and Africa, JBIC. Please welcome to the podium. And then finally, I'll invite Mr. David Rashkinha, Managing Director for Export-Import Bank of India. David, you're welcome to the podium. This session will run for about 1 hour. I think we are 5 minutes a bit behind schedule, but we'll readjust and calibrate our times. We will kick off with a keynote, and I'll also give the context, but because I'm giving a keynote, I'll just contextualize everything in the keynote, so that will save us some time. Then our two panelists will give each a 10-minute, 7 to 10-minute presentation on their experiences, basically the work of JICA. Dr. Toda will make comments, especially in terms of corridor facilitation and walk around corridors. And then Mr. Aida will also give us some highlights on the work of JBIC. And then we'll invite David. David says that I can call him David. So, and David will react to both presentations. So we'll keep it as interactive as possible. And then after the reaction, we'll have 1 or 2 questions within the panelists. And then we'll open it for the floor if we have time. So I think we'll go ahead and kick off. We have about 55 minutes. And I will start. Coincidentally, I'm also making a keynote. And as I've said, I'll combine both the keynote and setting the scene into one presentation. So I'll kick off by bringing greetings, warm greetings from my Chief Executive Officer, Dr. Ibrahim Hassan Mayaki. He's the CEO of the NEPAD agency, and he sends his warm wishes and greetings to this session. Good morning to you all. Again, Excellencies, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. Globally, most developed economies are beginning to look inwards and to strengthen their respective financial systems so as to prepare for the 4th industrial revolution, the age of wisdom. Developed economies are reaching a point of saturation in terms of consumer spending, and they continue to turn inwards, grappling with internal political challenges which have culminated into a populist ideological political shift. Terrorism has also intensified sharply over the recent years in conflict areas, which poses increasing risk in major economies around the world. The OECD forecasts a global GDP growth of a modest 3% and a 3.5% in 2018. This small boost in economic outlook is due to fiscal initiatives in major economies. Africa's contribution to global growth is an insignificant 0.1%, of which of the 3.5% mentioned. Despite this projected average growth of about 3.7% in 2018, the impact that Africa will have on the global economy will remain very marginal. Connecting markets in Africa is one of the top agenda for Africa, as it aligns and realizes its Agenda 2063. Agenda 2063 is the blueprint for Africa's development. It's a 50-year plan that spans over transforming the continent in terms of trade, free movement of goods, and people. However, it is viewed globally that business and consumer confidence has improved generally, but investment, trade, productivity have not strengthened as expected. And this has a direct impact on both foreign and domestic investments into Africa. Africa, although not significant to make a registered impact, still remains the 2nd fastest growing continent, in the region. Therefore, Africa holds much promise to those investors willing to invest in time and energy to understand the local markets and opportunities. It is also worth noting that all 54 African countries have forecasted in 2017 the need to transform their economies and to build infrastructure projects in terms of sea terminals, airports, energy, and other infrastructure projects to be implemented in 2017. However, with such statistical projections, the narrative on industrialization and intra-Africa trade is not very encouraging. For instance, the share of intra-continental trade in Africa over the past decade was only about 11%. The growth in intra-Africa trade is still not significant compared to global trade. This is part attributed to the underdeveloped transport infrastructure networks within the continent. Secondly, the contribution of Africa's manufacturing sector to the continent's gross domestic product is not increasing, and over the last 40 years especially. And thirdly, the contribution of manufacturing to jobs has stagnated at 6% for more than 30 years. In the same vein, Asia, however, has seen jobs from manufacturing increase from 11 to 16%. So in view of all these realities, the African leaders have decided over the past years to introduce a number of frameworks that will make a drastic change to these statistical inferences that I've mentioned. The first being the Plan of Action for Accelerated Development in Africa, AIDA. And AIDA aims to promote manufacturing and foster economic growth. The second being a plan called Boosting Intra-Africa Trade. And BIAT, which is Boosting Inter-Africa Trade, will see the doubling of inter-Africa trade by 2020. The establishment of the Continental Free Trade Area, CFTA, will also encourage and create free movement of goods, services, and people to boost infrastructure development and also encourage business and investments into the African continent. And then finally, the most recent plan being PIDA, which is the Program for Infrastructure Development. And PIDA prioritizes the implementation of infrastructure projects and programs to transform the African continent and also open Africa to the global economy. Although Africa's industrialization and infrastructure development is irreversible, agreeably, however, concrete efforts must be taken. For instance, the question that we should be asking ourselves now is, where does Africa fit in the fourth industrial revolution? And also, where does Africa fit in the new digital economy? This strategic positioning of Africa in the two mentioned topics, the digital economy and the fourth industrial revolution, underscores the need for Africa to transform. And it also highlights, as indicated in the 6th International Conference of Africa, TICAD, that Africa is ready to transform. All the global efforts, as I mentioned in TICAD, and also other global efforts within the G20 and the G7 and other international partnerships have also seen the need to boost Africa's transformation. And Africa welcomes that, particularly in accelerating its integration through corridor development. In conclusion, I would like to note that today around 40% of Africa's trade is towards the European Union and the US markets. It will be critical to have sustainable and mutually beneficial trade deals and thus diversify and expand our trade with other regions of the world, including Asia, where there are increasing opportunities as emerging markets develop. India is one of the oldest friends of Africa, and the strong partnership was reiterated in the India-Africa Summit of 2015. Japan has also been a great partner of Africa, and TICAD 6 and the TICAD process has demonstrated that. It is indeed interesting to see that the ASEAN region has become increasingly integrated, which has contributed to actual GDP growth within this region, and Africa stands to learn from that. Finally, Both the Delhi Declaration of 2015 and the Nairobi Declaration of 2016 calls for a stronger cooperation which is mutually beneficial to India, Japan, towards Africa. With these words, I conclude my introductory remarks, and I think I have also tried to set the scene. Without any further ado, I will now ask our panelists to make their interventions. It's a bit difficult because I'm switching from a moderator to the speaker, but I'm done with the speaking now, and I'll take up my role as a moderator. Dr. Toda, you now have the floor. I assume you'll be coming to the podium, or you'll be speaking from the floor? You're speaking from here. You want a roving mic?
Yes.
Okay. Can we organize a roving mic for Dr. Toda, please?
Okay, thank you, Chair. So good morning, Sabrabat and Ohio gozaimasu. Let's go straight forward to the conclusions, which crystallize the spirits of practitioners of so-called official development assistance. As most of you know, JICA is in charge of official development assistance. Thinking of J&J collaboration, JBIC, JICA, JETRO, JICA. JICA is in charge of constructing basement and probably some part of ground floor, but not on the top. We have three keywords. One is human development. Second is regional integration. The last, not the least, is enabling environment. Those are the words which we practitioners are always in our mind. Start with human development. We should not neglect the nasty fact of African situation. For example, 1/3 of kids are still under the condition of malnutrition. More than half of kids at the age of 12 still do not write, read, and calculate as Indians do. On the other hand, as always said, African continent has been enjoying historically unprecedented population bonus, which will continue probably at least more than 3 decades, probably 5 decades. But we have to eradicate the euphoristic way of treating Africa. We have to be cautiously optimistic by sensitizing ourselves to the importance of education. Education, I do not mean not only basic education, but also higher education. Second one, regional integrate. Okay, let me ask to all of you, why India is so much attractive for Japanese businessmen, for private sectors all over the world? We had an interview of more than 1,000 businessmen of Japan. The number one answer is the attractiveness of domestic market. Huge, affluent, dynamic domestic market of India. On the other hand, I will ask you, what is the domestic markets of 54 African countries? That is a logical consequence that we need to promote African integration. Not only spoke hub type integration, but also dynamic, multipolar, inclusive regional integration is indispensable for Africa to be attractive to the world market. And the last one, but not the least, that is enabling environment. I was in Rwanda a week ago, astounded positively by the clean and the efficient governance of the small landlocked country. Imagine how many days we have to spend when we open the company and get the official registration in Africa. How many days? How much dollars you have to spend, including some so-called informal money. In case of Rwanda, you can take 5 hours on the personal computer and online. You can do it. Mauritius as well, doing quite well. With this sort of enabling environment, we businessmen be attracted. So already 5 minutes pass. So let us quickly touch upon some of JICA's modest activities on the ground. Can somebody help me to go to the PowerPoint? No? I have prepared 7 PowerPoint. The first thing, starting with a corridor in the context of regional integration. 2013 in Yokohama, Japanese government committed to conduct 10 master plan for promoting the integration of Africa. Now, these master plans are going on. But these master plans are not only the paperwork. We are almost ready for financing some of top-ranked prioritized projects immediately after the finalization of these master plans. Secondly, in the course of implementing these master plans, we are very much eager to listen to Japanese businessmen, Indian businessmen, for their own desire to be more committed to Africa. Next one. Next one, please. Yes, this is one of the most attractive corridors, which make so-called small landlocked country into land-linked country. Imagine that the world's most delicious black beer in Zaire, Lubumbashi, which is called tembo. Tembo means elephant. That could be tasted in, not here, I'm sorry, but maybe in Tokyo someday. That could be done because of this central corridor. Okay, next one, please. And please be familiar with this interesting jargon, one-stop border post. This is a comprehensive approach of facilitating regional integration of Africa. I will explain. Next one, please. Yes. Okay, picking the example of Kenyan-Uganda border. Okay, some of Indians are very good at mathematics, so let's do together. 20 hours loss per day per truck, okay? That costs $300 or to the maximum $500. Multiplied by 600 trucks, okay, so far. Multiplied by 365 days, which costs how much? According to my modest calculation, it is well over $70 million annually. If multiplied by the dozens of borders in Africa, you can imagine some future brilliant Africa, which is quite similar to the marvelous country of India. Go ahead. But we should not forget, when we talk about Africans' prosperity, energy constraints. Some of you might recall 2007 and 2008, there was a serious energy crisis in that region where Toyota, Nissan, the Indian industry is also affected. We don't want to repeat this sort of inefficiency and the fragility to be stopped. For that, we should like to invite the Japanese highest technology of electricity transmission, ultra high pressure electricity transmission, which will increase more than 20% of the efficiency. Go ahead. Go ahead, please. Another attractive issue is geothermal power. Africa should not depend on the external natural resources. You have resources. And we started from experimental activities in Kenya, now expanded to Ethiopia, Djibouti, and even Rwanda. Geothermal power plant, which increase the robustness of African economies. For that purpose also, we're using highest technology of Japan. High pressure, high steam, high temperature, I forget, etc., etc. This kind of thing. Yeah. But I would like to also invite Indian academia, researchers, and practitioners and businessmen to join this sort of great activities. Okay, the next one. For those things to be realized in the most efficient and in an appropriately contextual way, African Development Bank is an indispensable partner. As our State Minister Otsuka righteously mentioned, we need to construct a win-win-win structure. For that purpose, African Development Bank is very important for JICA and for Japan as well. So far, we prepared 3 kinds of, tools to facilitate Africa's development financing. The first one is, of course, sovereign loan. And the second one, non-sovereign one. And the third one is for innovation in close collaboration with Austria government. By making full use of these modalities, I think JICA could make a modest but very important contribution to all of you. Let's work together. Let me reiterate 3 keywords which crystallize the various activities of Japan's ODA. The first one, the human development. The second one, the regional integration with inclusiveness, with multipolar character. And the last one, enabling environment, which enable private sectors on the driver's seat. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. Shukriya. ありがとうございました。
Much, Dr. Toda, and thank you for summarizing the presentation into the 3 keywords. I will now invite Mr. Ida, for the Executive Officer for Europe, JBIC, to give his presentation. Mr. Ida, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mel, Mr. Chairman. My name is Ida. Very easy name to remember, same as opera and musical. And so please keep in touch with me if you're interested in the project in Africa and also in India. And let me start my presentation using, could you, yes. Yes, okay. Today, of course, I'd like to focusing on Africa and in cooperation with India, especially. No work. Okay, so today, quick overview of the JBIC start and JBIC activity in Africa. And I'd like to introduce a little bit more the infrastructure, quality infrastructure initiative made by the Japanese government and JBIC pivotal role here. And we created special operations to enhance JBIC activities in infrastructure. I'd like to touch upon that. And lastly, we will induce some lessons and future maybe way of the collaboration with India. And go to the conclusion. So first, JBIC profile. JBIC is the government financial institutions. All the operation is the policy-based financing. And we are the promoter of the private companies' investment and trade, and mobilize the private funds and financing into the transaction and project. So we have 3 missions plus 1. First one is to secure the natural resources for Japan. Second one is to improve international competitiveness of Japanese company. And third one is prevent the global warmings, and that is the environmental mission. And plus 1 is, in case of the financial crisis, we will respond to the international financial disruptions, such as the Asian crisis in '97 and after the turmoil of the Lehman shock of the 2008. So please look at the geographical distribution of the JBIC portfolio. It seems to be well balanced, okay? But it's an exception. Exception is Africa. Africa's portfolio is just 2.3 only. It's really minimum amount. So actually, that's our focusing in Africa. Next focusing is Africa, definitely. So I'd like to explain JBIC in Africa. Then we announced the financial support of the $7 billion at the timing of the TCAD 6 last year in Nairobi. So, among this facility, 2.9 billion was already committed, and rest of the $4.1 billion is remaining for your future project. So in order to illustrate JBIC activity, I would like to put some cases here. Yes, first one is the project finance case. Okay, this is the Moroccan project named Safi IPP project. This is the ultra supercritical coal-fired power plant. And we financed together with the ISDB, Islamic Development Bank, and commercial banks with Nexi Insurance. Next one is the Angola's case. Sorry. Yes. This is the Angola's case. We financed the optical submarine system. This is the increase the connectivity. This project connect African continent and South Africa continent. This is made by this finance made by the guarantee by the Angola government. Next one is the credit lines to African banks. Together with commercial banks, we create the credit line to African banks, such as the African Export-Import Bank, and as well as PTA Bank. Now they changed the name to the TDP Bank. So next is this slide is showing the collaboration with AfDB, our very important partner. We financed the Mbatbi nickel project in Madagascar, and to secure the natural resources for Japan. And this is a project finance as well as the political risk guarantee to the commercial banks by JBIC. So, next one is the Japanese policy to the quality infrastructure. Okay. I will do it by myself, so don't worry. Don't worry, please do not touch. Okay? So the Prime Minister Abe announced a very strong initiative for the partnership for the quality infrastructure to the world. And especially the Africa is the very important target of us. And in line with the government policy, JBIC played the pivotal role to promote this initiative. And JBIC last year created the special operation. And this special operation, enabled JBIC to take the little bit one step further risks, which we cannot take under the normal operations, ordinary operations. So for instance, under this special operation, we would finance the project with the risk profile not within the scope of ordinary operations. Of course, as a responsible lender, we will always check debt sustainability of the borrowing entity. So experience in India is very, very important for the JBIC. So we're supporting the manufacturing-related facility in India by the Japanese companies. So the export by the Japanese companies. JSW and Reliance Industry, Gale, and Tata Steels are the very important customer of us as we pick up some of the name. So this is so we are promoting the sales of the Japanese company's equipment, not only made in Japan, but also made by Japan. So what does it mean? Okay. If the Japanese company made the affiliate company in India, and this Indian company export the products to the African countries, we'd like to support those the transactions through the financing. So this one is the another case, to support joint venture between Japan and India. So this case shows the Nippon Steel and Sumitomo Metal had a joint venture with Tata Steel, and we support this project as well. And maybe, okay. Yes. This is the maybe future case. I'd like to take the two examples from the Japan-India project in Africa. A Japanese company named Mitsui and Indian companies, ONGC and others, participating in the same project in Mozambique Area 1 LNG project. This is one of the typical cases, the collaboration between the India and Japan in Africa. And this one is the export of the construction machinery from India by the joint venture of the Japan and India. Hitachi and Tata made the construction machinery company in India, and if those companies sell those products to the Africa, this could be the eligible transaction for the JBIC. And let me go back to the conclusion. Yes, one conclusion. Okay, 3 key points, only 3 key points for your takeaway today. The first is, please consider utilizing the Japan's JBIC's facility for Africa investment and trade enhancement. Okay, as I said, 4.1 billion US dollar is left for your project. And second, if you create joint venture with Japanese companies in India or in Africa, please contact us and find a financial solution if you need. And third one is then our stance and our wishes to support the sales of the Japanese equipment, not only made in Japan, but also made by Japan. Okay, those are the three takeaways for you today. Thank you very much. I'd like to stop here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ida. We'll now invite David to react to both presentations. David, you have about 5 minutes. Yeah, thank you. Well, 5 to 7 minutes.
Sure. The Indians are very talkative people, so 5 minutes is cruel. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, dignitaries present. Let me first of all congratulate Simer, Toda-san, and Aida-san on very high-quality presentations. All of them have stressed the idea of corridors, development corridors, and physical infrastructure. And I would like to congratulate them on bringing these ideas to the fore for the purpose of India-Japan collaboration for building development in Africa. I'm going to go a little away because I see the Joint Secretary, Madam Neena Malhotra, in the audience, and I'm sure she will cover the lines of credit which the Government of India has extended. So I'm going to jump a little further and be a little provocative in this discussion with your permission. Infrastructure is excellent. We need infrastructure. We need infrastructure to connect the continent. What do we do to go beyond infrastructure? Let me throw out some ideas here going beyond the presentations just made. Starting with investment, and the last slide of JBIC is still on your monitors. What is the importance of investment over here? Let me give you the example of one of the storied Japanese investments in India, that is the Maruti Suzuki. In fact, as a small aside, I started my career working with Maruti many years ago, longer than I care to remember. The setting up of that joint venture in India didn't just create automobiles. It created auto ancillary industries. It brought in a culture of quality. It impressed on all of us the importance of quality in parts, not just in tolerances of metal, but in terms of the quality of processes. It created a infrastructure, a kind of a ecosystem, which then generated further business growing out of that one single investment. And the proof of the pudding is what you look around in India and see today. Why can't we replicate this in Africa? Why cannot we create a similar ecosystem by joint Indo-Japan investment into manufacturing and infrastructure investments in Africa, which create this kind of ecosystems multiplied all around the continent? Thought number one. Thought number two, we need institutions to take full advantage of the infrastructure which has been created. What do I mean by institutions? Africa as a continent has about 1.1 billion people, but Africa is 54 different countries. The 5 largest countries account for about 500 million of that population, and the other countries will have an average population of something around 25 to 30 million people, plus or minus here and there. That is not a scale adequate for development. It is not a scale that will create economies for an industrial unit, for infrastructure. We need to look at joint regional markets to start with. The point has already been made by JICA and JBIC about linking markets, but you need institutions by way of lending banks, development banks, and Exim banks to bring this to fruition. You need someone who is prepared to lend long-term and accept risk, not just from outside Africa, but within Africa. When Exim Bank of India was set up back in the 1980s, perhaps JBIC may or may not remember, but we at Exim Bank of India remember that JBIC helped us a lot in getting started and getting off the ground. Here is another opportunity for Indian and Japanese institutions to work at creating these institutions in Africa that can leverage the infrastructure built up through the lines of credit and other mechanisms. Green is another opportunity. In a world which is facing global warming, why cannot we work together on solar and wind projects? We are doing them independently, but this is an area which ticks all the boxes for all the countries concerned in Africa, in Japan, and in India, and offers us a good opportunity going forward. Let me just end, since I only have 5 minutes, why India and Japan? We are bankers. Bankers love numbers, so let me please throw some numbers at you. Japan is an advanced country, a world leader in R&D, renowned for its technological progress and already engaged through the TICAD program with African development. Importantly, Japan is a country with surplus savings. The savings investment gap in Japan is surplus to 3.1% of GDP, a tremendous surplus which is available for deployment. What is the deployment avenue? Within Japan, the 10-year government yields of the JGB, the Japanese government bonds, is 0.03% and sometimes edges into negative. So Japan needs an avenue to deploy this investment, the savings surplus, in an arena which will generate returns to take care of its pension and other needs. Look at India, and the story is almost the converse. India, of course, has been developing tremendously and has come a long way. We have a demographic dividend. We have a population which is looking for employment. We excel in intermediate technologies, adaptable, affordable, and appropriate, which sometimes are more relevant for a developing country than perhaps the more advanced technology. What about the savings? We have a deficit. Our savings and investment deficit is negative 2.3% of GDP. We attract capital to build up our domestic development, and if we have to deploy capital overseas to develop other countries, it adds to the deficit. We blend perfectly with a surplus and a gap. What are the government bond yields in India? The rupee government bond yields for 10 years are in the region of 6.9 to 7%. Dollar rates are even more expensive. If we use the yen as a method of financing, it globalizes the yen, it takes advantage of a low interest rate, which makes the project much more economical. It is a win-win situation in all ways, ladies and gentlemen. And one final point, a map of Africa was displayed by both JBIC and JICA, showing the number of countries over there. Now, this is not a competition, but let me just say that Exim Bank of India, through the government lines of credit, through joint investment opportunities, through buyer's credit, is present in almost every country of the African continent. We look forward to working more and more with Japan in growing this further. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, David. Thank you for those 5 minutes. I think you summed it up very well. We will open the floor, but before we just do that, we have about 7 to 10 minutes. Very quickly, we've heard from JICA the 3 important ingredients: human development, regional integration, and enabling environment. JB talked about finances, about investments, lines of credit, and I think David has pushed us to look at the ecosystem. Why is it that we're not doing these wonderful things that Japan and India has done together? Why is it that we're not doing it in Africa? So maybe we will just do 2 questions. Just stand up, say your name, and let us know who you want to direct the question to. Can we have a mic to that honorable gentleman, Rose? And then can we just have the second, who could be the second taker, so we can move quickly to the second taker? Okay, we have another mic at that end, right behind the cameraman. Gentlemen, you have the floor. Thank you.
Good morning to all of you. My name is Vijay Sardana from UPL Limited. You mentioned all the projects, but one big resource of Africa, that is agriculture. And today, most of the African population is engaged directly, indirectly with agriculture. And in your corridors, which is a fantastic connectivity approach, I request that you should also look at creating agriculture-related infrastructure along the corridors so that common man in remote areas of Africa gets connected to the world market. And India and Japan both are big consumption market as well. So it is not only the capital which is flowing from India, Africa, but also the investments and technology which is going to Africa, they find market. And it is much more sustainable partnership than just having an infrastructure project and then looking for a market who will utilize it. So I think agriculture should be base or foundation, and others will follow, because once the African farmers or population will have income in their hand, all other activities will start becoming sustainable. Otherwise, you will create infrastructure, and then you have to provide a budgetary support to run them, and that will become an unsustainable model. So I think look at agriculture as a foundation for African development. Link your infrastructure projects to agriculture so that income generation happens within Africa and all other investments become sustainable. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that. The nexus between agriculture and the corridors. But I think in when we come back to the panelists, we'll expand on that a little bit. Can we have the gentleman right behind the cameraman? I think you were standing for a minute there. And then after you, we'll close the Q&A and allow the panelists to sum up. Yeah, that gentleman, yeah. Thank you. You have the floor.
Hello. When we are talking about Japan, a beautiful word, Sogoshosha, appear in the mind. I think so many people will not aware of Sogoshosha. The Magnificent Seven, including Marubeni, Mitsubishi, Sumitomo, Itochu, they make a consortium backed by Bank of Japan, or I think Bank of Tokyo. They opened the office in the 54 countries after the World War II. They marketed Japanese product. So again, in this context, to do business, Japan, Africa, India, Sogoshosha consortium can be helpful to market these products. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we only have 5 minutes. I will now, unfortunately, we cannot take any more questions. I will now ask the panelists to make a 1-minute intervention each, and then we can close this session. Dr. Tore, you have the floor. Thank you. I'm not sure whether the mics will.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you. Let me respond to the first very important question. So infrastructure should be pragmatic and quality-oriented, should serve for agriculture. So in case of our corridor project, every project, I'm sure, is connected to the income generation of farmers and agricultures. Based on the bitter experience of India as well as Japan, 1960-17, our infrastructure development should be inclusive. There might be some sort of differentiation of different stages, but we should always think about agriculture, farmers, remote areas. Those are the reasons why we spend very, very energetically our times on the master plan development. And for that purpose, I would like to request Indian stakeholders to be more interested in sending critical mass of ICT engineers. Yes, transport, communication, it's okay, but they need ICT. And according to our colleagues in Africa, they have a very high-rank cutting-edge engineers, but they also need critical mass. India have both. So I would like to ask you and all of you to send the fairly good amount of middle-class and ICT engineers to Africa. That could be a very much good complementarity with our support. Thank you. 1.5 minutes.
Thank you very much for your question and comments. And I'd like to touch upon the agriculture issues. I observed a couple of Japanese companies are very, very interested in agribusiness rather than the agriculture as just the support or the assistance. And this is a very, very important phenomenon. And taking those, the change of the Japanese companies, the behavior, in the midterm business plan of JBIC, we are putting the stress on the agriculture and agriculture business and healthcare business as well. So we'd like to promote those, the area of the business as a future opportunity of the lucrative Japanese business, Japanese and Indian and African business. And one gentleman mentioned about the role of the Sogo Shosha. The Sogo Shosha's role is enormous and very, very important in not only the infrastructure, but also industrializations. And we would like to work together, the Japanese Sogo Shosha and the Indian company and African company as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. That was a very interesting and very relevant question you asked. Let me assure you that that is part of the development plan. Under the lines of credit of the Government of India, there are lines for improving the productivity of rice, maize, cassava, for tomato and mango processing plants. These are already being done. I agree with you, it doesn't get the glamour and attention of infrastructure, but it is happening, and let me assure you, my colleagues at the bank and I have rolled up our trousers to our knees on the banks of the Nile and walked in sugarcane fields talking with farmers in sign language to try and understand the problems. So it is there, it doesn't get highlighted quite so much.
Thank you very much. I think we've come to the end of this panel discussion. As always, we can't take all the questions, but I think it was interactive. Please join me to congratulate our panelists. And we've come to the end. Thank you very much.
Announcement. The participants here who haven't finished yet the registration, please finish it outside of the room, and please leave your name card there. And also the participants here, you can have lunch, and the menu will be printed on the backside of the voucher. You need a voucher. Without a voucher, lunch will be not served. So please take a voucher outside of the room. Thank you. And thank you very much, Mr. Shimer. And now I'd like to move to session 2. This session will discuss enhancement of African business under the cooperation of Japanese and Indian companies to contribute to the development of African economy. The key message of this session is what are the possibilities for Japanese and Indian companies to promote African business through working together. Okay, so I know very much Aida-san is very popular star of this session, but so please be seated. I'm sorry for that. You may be able to find JB colleagues during lunch. So you may wish to exchange name cards or something. Please, you can do that during lunchtime. So as the speaker, oh, still going. Can I ask all of the participants to have your seat? So participants, excuse me, can I ask you, all of you, to be seated? We'd like to move to session 2. Sorry, we do not have a break, so we'd like to move to session 2. Distinguished speakers are waiting. Sorry for that. So as a speaker, I would like to call Dr. Katsumi Hirano, Executive Vice President of JETRO. His speech title is India and Japan, the desirability of collaboration for Africa's development. His speech is always interesting, so I'd like to welcome Dr. Hirano, please.
Thank you very much, President. My name is Hirano from the Japan External Trade Organization. Let me start about this global picture of the development. We have the two type, distinctly different two type of the developing countries. And almost the majority of the developing countries is fluctuated, their economic boom, along with price movement of natural resources. That showed is a blue line. So they come to at the boom to the nearly to the 20% of the global share and world GDP. But after the natural resource prices going down to the going down again. But we have the few number of the very different type of the developing economy is observed in the East Asian region. It's gradually and steadily to increase is a share and a global global production. And we have the several groups of the developing country in Asian region. This movement initiated in Japan, our countries, to attract its manufacturing production, and followed by we call the needs for. Needs is Singapore, Korea, Hong Kong, Taiwan. And needs was followed by the ASEAN 10 countries, and now is China. We call it export-oriented industrialization. And in our academic society in Japan, we call the flying geese theory. It's in the gradually to increase is countries to participate is this type of the global development. In our stage, is almost 25% of the global manufacturing is done in the East Asian region. And this type of number of this type of the developing country is gradually increased, now touch upon in the South Asian region. And during this kind of the development, two developing countries group. One is exporter, it's mainly natural resources, and one is a manufacturing good. It's mutual tradeship is increasing tremendously, especially in the 21st century. It's led by China. The trade volume among these developing countries is sevenfold to compare to the late stage of the 1990s. As part of this kind of the expansion of the trade is developing countries, trade between China and Africa is increasing. This figure is shown. This figure is import from Africa, led by the US and held by China. Now China is a dominant export partner for Africa. And 70% of the import from Africa, in case of China, is crude oil. And more than 19% of in case of the US, is crude oil. And this figure shows is export to Africa. And the export side is China, is almost a sole winner. During this economic boom, is after the 21st century, consumption in Africa is expanding very rapidly, and the main source of the product came from China. This figure indicating that movement. So briefly, let me touch in the theme of the China and Africa. A new policy line in China toward Africa initiated the mid-1990s. At that year, China becoming the net importer for the crude oil. So it's indicated it's a starting point as a new policy in China is initiated and focus on the natural resource procurement. But now stage is main focus on African policy in China is changing infrastructure building and also the manufacturing transfer. President Xi Jinping himself indicated several times is China soon going to lose to the international competitiveness owing to the high increase of the wage level in China. So the China are trying to transfer to their own production capacity is a neighboring Asian country and also reach to the African country. This kind of the movement and also the terminology or the developing assistance cooperation system is have the big similarity to the Japan. Our experience is the 1960s to 70s. We call the economic cooperation policy toward Southeast Asia. So our Japanese can easily understand to the next step of the Chinese policy toward Africa. And the big question is assessment by the Africans to the Chinese activity in the African continent. And let me introduce this BBC poll, international poll. It's the latest one in 2014. So this figure from the several African countries is each country have almost 1,000 correspondent say it is a very affirmative answer on the Chinese activity in Africa. It's the first country is UK. It's the most appreciated by the Africans. And China is the next. So generally speaking, I think we can say it is a Chinese activity was welcomed and very high appreciated by the African peoples. But the big question there that is profitability and the accountability and the sustainability of the project and loan done by the Chinese. So let me talk about this Japan, our country. We should resuscitate this Japanese economy. And for that purpose, we are trying to expand to the economic activity by the Japanese people and the Japanese private companies beyond Asian accustomed area, including the African continent. As part of the endeavor, Japan tried to catch up to China in Africa. And the purpose to the build to the more broader and sustainable connection between Asian and Africa. And also, we highly hope to make a collaboration with other foreign countries who can share to the same wish and same interest doing the business in the African continent. So, Prime Minister Abe already invited Prime Minister Modi in India to join Asian African Growth Corridor, we call the AAGC, which proclaimed to hold a peaceful and prosperous international order in the Indian Oceans. So I already touched on as a flying geese in Asia. And also indicated the flying geese already come to the South Asia, this region. For that is the first example that the movement is a textile industry. Has already shifting from East Asia, a good example from Hong Kong, to the South Asia, a good example in Bangladesh, in the early stage of the 1990s. And not only the textile industry, in general and the manufacturing sectors, South Asia's share in the global manufacturing is gradually increasing. So very broadly speaking, global development momentum is initiated the Far East Asian region and going to the west side. And now is South Asian countries, including that momentum, and which I said is export-oriented industrialization, have the good characteristic to attain to the full employment. This is a very good characteristic of this type of the development, and full employment and the more equal income distribution. But on the other hand, Africa's manufacturing share is very stagnated. That result is a huge unemployment. Why? This graph shows is the productivity of the food cereal. And land productivity of sub-Saharan Africa, very stagnated, and if I put in so the before modernization period. But in case of the South Asia and as an Asian region, increasing very steadily. And in case of South Asia, is now is more than the triple to compare to the early stage is just after Second World War. Low productivity and food production yield is poverty in rural area, but also is affected to the industrial development. This showing is a price index is compared to the Asian and Africa. The price, food price level, cereal food price and meat price is always higher than Asia and Africa, almost a double level. This came from as a low productivity of the food production. Low productivity yield is a high price and a small supply. And high level of the food prices is inevitably bring to the high average wage in the manufacturing sector. This will pick up the several countries from the African continent and Asia, South Asia. You see it is, for example, the Kenya is much higher than Pakistan or the Bangladesh, Sri Lanka. So it means African countries have no comparative advantage in labor. This is a big problem for Africa, especially in the context of the industrialization. So Africa's challenge I think it's a long-term subject for the African development, is to increase food productivity and attain food sufficiency. And the current situation in almost 60% of the African labor force still engaged in the agriculture sector, but they cannot afford this urban population. It means 40% of the total population demand. That kind of situation both is higher food prices, as I mentioned, and wages level, resulting in the biggest cereal import in the world, bigger than the East Asian region. It characterized as a very persistent poverty situation in Africa, especially in sub-Saharan Africa. This graph showing is cereal trade balance in case of India, South Asia, and sub-Saharan Africa. India, after the Green Revolution movement, is rapidly increased as a productivity. I already touched on this, more than triple. That is a very high improvement is a tradership of the food cereal. Now India is a net export countries of the food cereal. But sub-Saharan Africa, import volume is increasing as always and still continue to increase much higher than the East Asia. So let me touch on the Green Revolution in Asia. A productivity leap in case of wheat is initiated in India and Pakistan, and productivity increase in rice is initiated in also the late part of the 1960s in Southeast Asia. So the Green Revolutions was brought by the very basic genes who have the higher productivity. That kind of the gene and the technique were developed in Japan before the World War II. And through the US, is a sort of technology introduced in the Indian subcontinent and as an Asian region. We called that movement is a Green Revolution. And Green Revolution swept is a very pessimistic opinion on Asian future that was prevailed in those days, and also the prepared social basement of the industrialization. That is a comparative advantage of labor and creates a domestic market and labor supply. But in the current situation, which I already explained in case of in Africa, global momentum of the global development might cease without visiting Africa. So now China is a source of the manufacturing shifting from China to other parts of the world, and definitely will come to the South Asia, but we are not sure they're coming to Africa or not. From that point, I think is the main focus is Asian-Africa growth corridor, which Japan now proclaimed. So we highly hope to assure further economic progress in South Asia, especially in India, your country, and tighter integration with East Asia as a component of the regional economy. That effort will keep to the global development momentum. And furthermore, to extend the global development momentum to Africa, which I said that is the main focus, in my opinion, to the Asian-Africa connectivity. Now, our academic wing of the JETRO, we call the Institute of Developing Economy, which I spent more than 25 years as an Africanist in there, have the special team of we call the geographical simulation model. So the GSM now try to analyze to the economic effect of the infrastructure building between Asia and Africa. And now there is a special focus on Kenya and India. So from that scientific analysis, we soon make it clear to the real profitability of the infrastructure building between Asia and Africa. So we are very feel honored. Yesterday's Prime Minister Modi named our institute ID JETRO. That is academic activity now we are engaged in. On the other hand, the private sector should play the pivotal role in Africa, especially in the 21st century. JETRO, our organization, have a strong wish to promote collaboration between Indian and Japanese private company in order to establish free and fair and comprehensive connectivity between Asia and Africa. And first step, we want to express in here, in Kenya, we call the Mombasa Special Economic Zone. So we are highly hope to invite Indian counterpart come to this Mombasa SEZ to make us a very active economic activity and building a good African business together with Japanese companies. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Hirano, for your speech, and please remain on that stage. Then I'd like to invite the next speaker, Madam Khadija Diallo, Director of Private Sector Development, African Development Bank, our colleague. She will speak about an expectation for Japan-India cooperation in the private sector from the viewpoint of Africa and the African Development Bank. Madam Diallo, please.
Thank you. Yeah, it's okay. I don't have the PowerPoint presentation. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished girl. Yes. And how do you say it in Hindi? Namaskar. Namaskar. Okay. I would like first to thank the Japanese government's organizations such as JICA, JBIC, JICA, JETRO, for the important initiative to revigorate the partnership between India and Japan for the sustainable development of Africa. However, in saying so, I also want to give our perspective as African Development Bank. And for those who are in the room and do not know who is the African Development Bank, I would like to say that it is a AAA institution like the World Bank, Asian Development Bank, EBRD, and then Inter-American Development Bank. We have 54 African countries as shareholder, and then more than 20 other countries as a non-regional shareholder, including India and Japan, Korea, France, US, Canada, etc. So we are a multilateral organization. We have a long-standing relationships with Japan, and we have an office in Tokyo that is organizing this event equally. So the timing and the context of this event are important from several perspectives. Of course, it is a testimony of a strong avenue for a triple win, as indicated earlier by previous speaker, between Japan, India, and Africa. It is happening at a time when various stakeholders, including India and Japan, and our shareholders are scaling up their intervention to support Africa that urgently need to transform structurally. And they build a resilience of economy because, as some of you have observed, Africa has paid a high price of commodity swing, although it is an under-resourced continent. But the transformation of this continent cannot go with the business as usual based on import and export. So a new business model is needed. And the transformation also cannot be public sector like in the past. It is private sector led and public sector enabled. So we have to have another momentum in the partnership between Japan, India, and Africa. And this is an important take for us as African Development Bank. India is a big player in the journey because the India partnership with Africa has been historical, multidimensional, and India is now exploring a trilateral partnership in tandem with other countries such as Japan, US, and others for reinforcing its engagement in Africa. And as an old saying in my region is that only the 5 fingers can clean very well, so 1, 2 cannot. We need to add another one. So that's why it's important to have this partnership between the 3. Having said that, there is a testimony that the expanding relationships recently engaged in by India and has been crystallized by the Exim Bank India-African conclave that has happened in March 2017, whereby 472 projects worth of 70 billion has been discussed. So it means that the business is there, the opportunity is there. It is now how to do, how to engage, and how should we partner in order to make this happen. In addition to that, the Africa has a number of business opportunities. We, African Development Bank, we have for the coming years at least 2.5 billion pipeline of projects in order to achieve our target in the high 5 in Latin Africa. 2 billion for our target, and I think our president have indicated all the high 5 for the industrialized Africa. For agriculture, we have a pipeline of 1.5 billion, and then you can name it. So that means that at our own bank's level, there is an existing pipeline of projects that we can nurture, and we need to nurture them together. Beyond that, in a much larger perspective, a study commissioned recently by a KPMG indicated that there is 2.3 billion business opportunity in US dollar, obviously, in Africa, of which 1.3 trillion for consumer industries and around 500 billion for agriculture. That means that if I set the scene, there is a lot of opportunity, but how to make the opportunity becoming realities, this is why we need to be to engage proactively between the 3 institutions and do it in another way. In snapshot of Africa and the banks, our banks are open for business with an enormous potential of investment opportunity, but there is a need for innovation and technology. My previous speaker showed the productivity gap that we need to bridge. And that need a lot of investment. And that happened at a time where private sector in Japan still lead technology and advancement and innovation in various industries, and it is the right momentum to use this catalyzer in order to make transformation happen. And transformation happen in agriculture, but that cannot happen without industrialization. Otherwise, we will remain in export-import-based or commodity-driven economy that will not serve the continent, and the unemployment and poverty will continue to subdue in Africa. So we need to scale up. We need to scale up by having more electricity, more corridor to transport the commodity from where they are produced to the market, and also integrate our market. Why I'm saying that, I can give an example that show that it's important that we move toward another type of journey. For instance, Toshiba transmission distribution system in India has been awarded in April last year 34 million contract by Kenya Power Lighting Company to supply approximately 8,000 distribution transformer. That was possible only due to the Toshiba acquiring the TD transformer and switchboard businesses of Vija, which is the one Indian leading manufacturer in distribution transformer. Previous speaker also indicated the Mozambique NLJ project, which is a 26 billion project, by the way, huge opportunity, in which African Development Bank, Mitsui, and Bharat Petroleum India and Oil India, we are engaged in order to make it happen. Very big project. And we can name a lot of projects like that. We have done the Nakala Corridor, which is rail, mine, port, and along which African Development Bank itself is building agropole and cooperative to make it an integrated infrastructure, because this is also the second model that we want in Africa in this journey of tripartite win-win between Japan, Africa, and India. How we do it, or how we connected the dots, that means that it's not easy, but it's easy also. Let me explain what I mean. I mean that the risk perception of Africa is higher than the real risk. That's why we, African Development Bank, as a preferred creditor, and then also being the major bank of the continent and having all African countries as shareholder do co-financing for non-sovereign lending operation. We provide risk mitigation, both political risk and partial credit risk mitigation product. We also having project development company and fund of fund. And with India, we have already Kukuza, which is a fund to do project development in order to bring more Indian investors in the infrastructure area in Africa. We are also establishing new partnership trust fund in order to ensure that we have more leverage and more reach through private equity in Africa. To be a little bit short, because there is a lot to say about business opportunity for both Japan, India, and Africa. I would like to, however, indicate that there is a need to move from export-based business type of model in engaging in Africa toward more stake equity and the debt financing through transformational infra project in power, in agro-industry, agro-ally, and so forth. There is also a need to move from the model of being only ECP contractor, because most of the Indian company we work are our ECP contractor. It's important, of course, but it's not sufficient, because what is needed is to bridge the financing gap in Africa, and then to seize the business opportunity and make more impact on the ground through leveraging on our capacity of co-financing and also our capacity to pooling resource to ensure that we build capacity, we train, we develop integrated structure around the project that we finance. So this is in snapshot my take and our view as African Development Bank. Thank you for your patience, and then you are welcome to Africa.
Thank you, Madam Diallo. So from now, we are going to get input voices from the private sector, because this is a very important part of this event. We can understand the current status, prospects and the challenges and the hope from the private sector business people. So I'd like to invite 4 speakers. First, I'd like to call upon Dr. Jay Singh, Managing Director and CEO, Sakata Seed India Private Limited. Dr. Singh, please.
Namaste, Ohayo gozaimasu, bonjour. Actually, I come from a company, private sector, it's a company called Sakata Seed India. We are a 103-year-old company in Japan, and in 2008, we started the activities in India. Now, we started some small activity, I will say is like, say, sowing of seed in Africa 3 years back. And I will like to share with you the experience of the last 3 years, and which fit very well into today's theme, like when India and Japan come together, and I think we can address the problem, or we can address the issues in agriculture. You know, like, unlike Japanese, when we think about Japan, means people think electronics, automobiles, big things, but we are dealing in commodity or item, like, which is called vegetable seeds, and it affects the poorest of the poor. When we talk about Africa, the good quality seed, which is not accessible to the people there also, especially the ladies, 60–70% of these small activities, marginal farmers, it is handled by them. And where quality seed can play a very crucial role. The ladies can grow some good crop, she can market to nearby village, or if she has good infrastructure, can transport to some 30, 40, 50 kilometers and can generate some income. So before going into the detail, let me first introduce, I come from a company called Sakata Seed Corporation. It is based in Yokohama, Japan. We are a listed company in first section of Tokyo Stock Exchange, and we have almost 23 global subsidiaries, 100% owned by Sakata Seed Japan. In India, we started activity in 2008. Okay. Now, this is the global network, like this is the presence of Sakata. So I just wanted to show you that we are a global company with a long history. In Africa, also, of course, we are addressing this one. We have a company in Sakata, South Africa, and the northern part of Africa and western part of Africa, we are tackling through France. Now here, I would like to make a general comment here. Most of the European companies, they are looking to Africa to grow the fresh produce which can be cheaply produced. You know, like you grow tomato, you cherry tomato, broccoli, all those, and then big supermarket, they purchase and transport back to Europe. While from Indian point of view, we are looking for the product which can be used by the local African people, and there is a lot of similarity. I will touch upon this one. Now, just to give a simple data, this is 2015 data. I know Mr. Hirano-san was saying that China is going very strong in Africa, and I feel like I have traveled almost 7–8 times in Africa last 3 years. You will see very big presence of Chinese, like say, they're buying agricultural land, they are into a lot of infrastructure. If you travel to villages also, you will find some activities. And I think Japan is lagging behind, and I think last 2–3 years we are awakening also. So I think we, both India and Japan, need to work very strongly together to make impact in Africa. If you look into this one, like the seed import, of course, value is very small, but this value make lot of impact on the final produce. Of course, India also small, but from agriculture point of view, if you look Africa and India, I think whatever crops we can grow here, they can be grown very easily there. We have almost, yeah. So primarily, you know, the agriculture plays very big role. In India, almost 16–17% of GDP come from agriculture, but if you see most of the African countries, except some countries like South Africa, and then is almost like 20–50% of GDP come from agriculture. So that's why the agriculture is very, very important. It is not only for employment generation, but I think it plays a key role. And among agriculture, we are focusing only in vegetable seeds. Now, these are the similarities, like say, when we compare the population, of course, like India, 1.25 to 1.3 billion people, and Africa also almost similar kind of population. And sub-Saharan Africa is a majority. Now, more than 50% of population in India, you can say like similarly in Africa also, they are engaged in agriculture directly or indirectly. And in Africa, primarily, more than 50% manpower is women in agriculture. Now, if you look into climate, of course, both tropical and subtropical, of course, if you live North Africa, then most of the climate is like Indian type. And the vegetables, they grow into open field cultivation. It is unlike Europe or Japan, where you grow in poly houses, protected cultivation, but here it is open field conditions. So that means with a small farm, which is what we grow in India also, almost similar kind of open field cultivation, and vegetable farmers are very small holding. It's not like big, large holding, like 1 hectare or maximum like 1 acre, that kind of. So both similarities are there. So whatever the product we develop, I think it can fit into the African market. Now what we need here, like we need a good quality seed, which is like give you good yield, and we need good transportability. We don't need any product which you harvest and it spoils so quickly. Because unlike like Japan, likely like in India also, we harvest and then we transport into market. So it has to be tough, very good keeping quality, and it has to be resistant to like local, no, high rain, high temperature, many biotic and abiotic diseases. Now, and mostly it is used open pollinated varieties. Of course, in India also we use open pollinated varieties also, but we need to be improved, replaced with them the high yielding varieties, which are, now these are the requirement, like say, because if you include cereals also, like paddy or wheat and these kind of cereal crops, the farm seed usage is almost 80%. Whereas like world average is 30–35%. So I think this is one area which need to be addressed. Like if you use quality seeds, I think your productivity will go definitely high. Now, one of the biggest challenge also, of course, the access of good quality seed in Africa, what we feel. I'm just talking about vegetable sector. Access of good quality seed and the variety or the vegetable which is locally adaptable there. It has to be locally adaptable there, and it has to have a good resistance to the local like heat and rain and diseases also. And of course, it has to be a very good affordable price. You cannot expect that what you are selling in Japan and can sell it there. But it fit into the market requirement, what are the products we are developing in India. Those products fit into very well there also. Then of course, the seed delivery system is also not so well established. So we have to look into how the product to be delivered to the farmer end user. And then again, with the quality seed, you have to go with the lot of cultural practices. You have to train them, you have to educate them how to use it, and a lot of extension work is also required. Of course, this is like India is of course doing it, and almost you can see the entire African continent, the seed export is taking place. This is the value, like the vegetable seed from India. And of course, if you compare last 15 years, it is going up, but value-wise is very small. But it can make a lot of contribution into the final income. I will not go into detail of this one, but except South Africa, most of the seed industry in Africa is in, like say, in infancy or to developing stage. There is no much private sector developed except few countries, but if you look into stage 2 and stage 3, where primarily most of the countries are there, they don't have the R&D, the seed replacement, the quality seed access is not available. So what we Sakata are doing it, that we are trying to make available to the farmers there how they grow, and which is very much suited to their local food habit and the local crop. We are not going to introduce any vegetable which is not used to them. Like we are, like say tomato, okra, cabbage, these kind of stuffs we are doing there also. And you see the handling of vegetable is very much similar like India. Like in India also, if you don't look into like supermarket or very big hi-fi, but 90% of the vegetable which are grown by the farmers, they just harvest from the field and just put into truck and bring to vegetable market. And it is like very rough handling. So your product has to be very tough. It can bear those environment, high temperature, and does not spoil, and can live up to like say 4 to 5 or 6 days. So this is how the African markets, the vegetable are handling. And you see here, like here, this is the farmer here in Senegal. Like they bring harvest cabbage, the one here in Roba, and they put into gunny bag, and then they bring to vegetable market. Now you look into a classical example. If you use the product from Japan, in Japan, cabbage has to be very soft, very like nice, which goes very nicely with tonkatsu and cabbage, no, like salad. But if you grow that cabbage in India, nobody will buy it. Because in India, when we grow it, it has to be very compact, tough. Farmer harvest it, put into trucks, unload it into vegetable market, still it is compact. It does not break away. So similarly, same kind of handling required in Africa also. So those kind of stuff, I think, when the researchers in Japan, they develop here in Indian climate, and those products we can put into Africa. Similarly, this is like, say, training part and education part. Like in Japan, you know, like very high-tech agriculture, no? Like you use very drip irrigation system, fertilization. So those kind of activity, when you educate the farmers, I think they get very good yield. They can make money also. Even a small farmer, about 1 acre or half acre, but they will follow your instructions. And if you educate them that these are the cultural practices you have to follow, he can generate income. And I feel this can be a very good contribution, especially for the women economy, which is, they are primarily depending on this one. And of course, we do a lot of extension activities. You have to educate them. You cannot just say, okay, I sold you seed and please grow it. It is going to be failure. So you have to educate them, okay, this is the way you grow it and these are the practices you have to follow up. And when farmer make money, he create interest. He will come back to you. This is, of course, like part of extension activities, how we grow it. Most of the farmers, they grow it. This is in Kenya. So just you grow tomato and then they leave it as it is. So many, like say, tomatoes get spoiled or rotten away. But we say, okay, if you do a little bit of stacking, you have a wood and then tie the plant on this one. So whatever harvest you get, the tomato will not spoil away and you get a good produce. And they start following these instructions. And once you see that when farmer see some benefit, economic benefit, so he will follow you. And you see, like these are the crops. So you see, these are the like okra, beetroot, or we do the extension activities. So they will listen to you, that if you educate them, okay, this is the way you grow it, they will listen to you. And once they make money, they will definitely come back to you. This is how we are doing it. Like you harvest tomato, which can be kept up to like say 15 days, like even there, without spoilage. So quantity and toughness is more important than what you go for the taste. And once farmer actually like it, then he will come back to you, okay, I need this packet. I need this tomato because this is very tough and I can keep it into market for 5-6 days without spoilage. And he's very happy. He will come back. So what I'm trying to say here, that whatever research we are doing in Japan and same quality of research we do in India, and we see the climate, which is very much similar to African climate here. Those products are going very smoothly there. So this is my feeling, and it is just a beginning we started, just 3 years back only. But I think we can do lot together, both India and Japan together, for the African agriculture farmers, especially in the vegetable seeds. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sen. So the second speaker from the private sector is Mr. S. Kupswamy. It's okay. Head of Shaprooji Baronji. Group Africa Business Center, Shaprooji Palonji Limited. Mr. Kupswamy, please.
Minasan konnichiwa. For a person who has been from the industry championing the cause of Indo-African collaboration with the active assistance of Export-Import Bank of India, the fact that the idea has come to fruition is extremely pleasing. Perhaps it has not been an easy journey, but as the statistics and the maps provided by Hirano-san a little earlier would prove to you, the imperative for Indo-Japanese collaboration in Africa cannot be lost on any of us. We have heard the statistics. It is time to bring some passion into the topic and spur ourselves into action. What is now needed is to identify potential areas of collaboration, weigh the strengths and weaknesses of the two sides, combine our strengths together and harness them suitably so that, as an earlier speaker had said, there will be a triple win triangle. All sides stand to win. I thought it was the Vice Minister from Japan who said it. I come from a group which is 151 years old, the Shapoorji Pallonji Group, which comprises Shapoorji Pallonji, Afcon's Infrastructure, Sterling & Wilson Electricals, Eureka Forbes, and the like. The strength of the group is its longevity, the kind of trust that it has built with its clients over the past, the quality of work, and the ability to complete projects on or ahead of time to the fullest satisfaction of the client. The group has a turnover of more than 5 billion today, with a workforce of more than 50,000, having been the first Indian construction group to have stepped outside Indian shores into the Middle East. We built the Palace of Sultan Qaboos in Muscat way back in 1970, which is even today hailed as the hallmark of Indian construction in that part of the world, with a presence of more than 14 countries in Africa and 50 countries worldwide. You can see from the map that we are present almost everywhere. In Algeria, we have a mass housing project, a hospital project, a solar project. In Gambia, we have constructed the National Assembly. In Sierra Leone, we are putting up a hotel project, I beg your pardon. In Cote d'Ivoire, an IT park. In Ghana, we built the presidential office, which is, if you Google through, you'll find that it's listed among the top 10 presidential offices in the world. And today, with the successive governments of Ghana having endorsed it, we have undertaken with Exim Bank's bias credit support a $400 million Tema Akosombo railway project, which again I must emphasize is a project of regional integration that will open up the landlocked countries of West Africa, fully exploiting their mineral potential and ensuring that finished products and even agriculture products find a market through the Tema port in Ghana. Again, coming down, in Gabon, we have built for Olam 1 port, 2 more jobs are in succession. I believe some of them are funded by the Japanese agencies. And we have, in Nigeria, we have taken up a gas power plant. In Guinea, Conakry, we are doing an aluminum mining project EPC contract. In South Africa, Sterling & Wilson Electricals, our group company, has completed ahead of schedule a 90 megawatt solar power. In fact, Sterling & Wilson ranks #1 among the solar power EPC companies in India and ranks among the top 5 EPC companies in solar sector in the world. We have taken up a solar power project also in Zambia, and in Zambia itself, we are now implementing decongestion of Lusaka city, again under the Exim Bank's bias credit, at $300 million project. In Zambia itself, we are in active negotiation with Marubeni for a textile plant. Possibly we might take it up as a greenfield venture. We have, again, undertaken the EPC contract of a peat power project in Rwanda, a small agriculture project in Ethiopia, and solar power project in Egypt. Our collaboration with Japanese companies like IHI is evidenced by what we have done in Kochi. Out of the 6 or 7 LNG storage tanks in India, 4 have been done by AFCONS, my group company, which is for IHI, and for Shell also elsewhere. This is the first IHI project in India that we did in Dahej, in Gujarat. Again, JICA funded Delhi Metro. More than 60% of the Delhi Metro, both overground and underground, have been done by AFCONS. The tallest railway bridge in the world, 365 meters tall, taller than the Eiffel Tower, is now under construction in Chenab in Jammu and Kashmir area, which is possibly the tallest site of construction with huge cranes in the world. Another project of which the government of India itself is very proud is the Rohtang Pass. In snow-clad conditions, we are providing connectivity which will be all through the year once it is completed, which is the longest tunnel at 8.8 kilometers length at a height of 13,000 feet in the world. Shapoorji Pallonji is more known for its landmark buildings. Many of them are heritage buildings. Some of the latest ones, the IT parks, the hotels, the hospitals, and the latest, possibly one of the costliest hospitals in the world in Kuwait. But we have also perfected the formula for low-cost hospitals in West Bengal. We are already completed 18 hospitals for the government of West Bengal on a budgetary basis. We propose to take this formula to Africa because healthcare is the primary necessity in Africa. We believe that with the help of Japan, we will be in a position to take good quality primary, secondary, and tertiary healthcare to Africa all through. It is a vision of my group's chairman, Shapur Mistry, to invest in hospitals in Africa. He has a grandiose vision of 100 hospitals that will take time, but we can kickstart and start at least 5-10 hospitals in the next 5-10 years. We are completing the Riyadh airport in a joint venture, and in the solar space, we are present all over. This is a view of the South African solar power project that we have completed ahead of schedule. In fact, it was completed so far ahead that even the transmission lines to be provided by the government there had not been completed. Now we have several ideas and approaches how India and Japan can strategically align and implement projects in Africa. The easiest, of course, would be for Japan, JICA and JBIC to provide exclusive lines to the Exim Bank of India for implementation of projects in Africa, which will be untied, which can be without any complication whatsoever, if that is feasible. Other areas, other ways that it can be implemented are co-financing between Exim Bank and Japanese agencies. I have been championing that, since Japan has cutting-edge technology and India has an excellent workforce, as some Japanese workers had earlier commented upon, these two strengths can be very easily combined to have a proportion of financing of 70-30, and if possible, an inverse ratio in the allocation of work itself, so that, a greater risk can be taken by Indian companies wherever they are strong, and technology can be brought in by Japan, and funding can be brought in a greater measure by Japan. Partial guarantees can be offered by Japan to Exim Bank of India for providing longer and cheaper credit to African ventures. I had already mentioned about combination of buyer's credit from Exim Bank of India and JBIC or JICA. Identification of projects is the primary source where we can sow the seeds of success. We have in mind, I'm not going to share all of them here today, we have in mind a host of projects for which we have already had extensive discussions with different governments in Africa. One indication I can give is, as I mentioned to you, we already started the Tema Akosombo railway project in Ghana. It's a 93-kilometer railway line. It has been endorsed by 2 successive governments in Ghana, as I already emphasized. Now, we talked about regional integration. Burkina Faso, Niger, Mali, all these countries would be benefited if this line is taken up to Paga in Ghana itself, for which the government of Ghana and the governments of neighboring countries will be happy to provide the support. It will be great if Japan and India can join together in one such project, which will be showcasing the technical prowess of Japan and the workforce and technology of India also. An oil terminal in Kenya. Kenya is, of course, an area of interest for Japan, and this could be easily identified as one such project. Dams in in Kenya. Lapsed corridor offers extensive opportunities to us both, be it roads, be it railway, be it port terminals. I understand that Japan has already identified a bridge project in Ghana, which could possibly be identified as one such India-Japan venture. Housing offers great opportunities. It is not necessary that it should be funded by governments only. In fact, Shapoorji Pallonji has already got into a joint venture with IFC and Standard Chartered Bank. If Japan is interested, you can join us. We can have a platform where housing solutions can be provided to all countries wherever such need is felt in Africa, so that the governments need not be burdened by a debt. This will be taken by special purpose vehicles. I rest my case. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Kupaswamy. Then we'd like to invite the next speaker. Third speaker is Mr. Raful Sika, Vice President and Head of Africa, Lawson and Tubero. Mr. Sika, please.
Good morning, dignitaries and dear friends. A lot has been said since the morning with regards to the possibilities that exist of this excellent idea that was floated by the honorable prime ministers of both of our countries. My task today is to stick to a 10-minute schedule and talk about a host of different items. I will hope and I'll try to stay within 10 so that we are able to maintain our schedule. Larsen & Toubro, for those of you who are not aware, is India's largest engineering and construction company. We have, over the last 75 years and more, worked on creating a very, very solid reputation in terms of performance, delivery, and reliability. The India-Japan Cooperation for African Development is a great vision. I spoke about it briefly earlier, to promote the cooperation between our countries and the African continent. I must, at this point in time, definitely thank JBIC, JETRO, JICA, our Ministry of External Affairs, FICCI, and AfDB today for having provided the support that they're providing. Of course, the order is not selected, it's random. The objective clearly to synergize and explore specific joint opportunities within skill and community development, health, infrastructure, and connectivity. India's Act East policy and Japan's expanded partnership for quality infrastructure policy are the two leading guidelines for us, and we will work within those to create what was described by the Honorable Minister from Japan as a win-win-win situation. Yes, there is a lot that is spoken and discussed at meetings and sessions like these, but translating them into action is not always easy. For us to be able to do that, there has to be an earnest cooperation. Reminds me of a session I attended yesterday, which was organized to discuss financing of infrastructure projects in Africa. Now, financing of infrastructure projects in Africa has always sort of been the domain of the governments. Various speakers spoke yesterday, and there was one clear conclusion, that the private sector needs to get involved. Even today, earlier, one of the eminent speakers spoke about the increased necessity for, I think it was Mrs. Diallo, she spoke about the increased necessity for the private sector to lead these initiatives and these cooperation ventures. A brief introduction to L&T. I told you we are the largest engineering and construction company from India. Revenue last year of over $16 billion, more than 50,000 dedicated and qualified employees, 124 subsidiaries across the world, and number 25 globally among the contractors or EPCs. This is the 2016 data. We are a very, very trusted partner of the government of India in terms of projects of national importance. I will discuss a little bit more about the entire portfolio, but this picture on our screen today is a Statue of Unity that is under construction in this very state, in the state of Gujarat, for one of our founding fathers. The business structure of L&T, so we provide projects within almost every single sphere of construction, infrastructure, hydrocarbon, heavy engineering, power, and shipbuilding. Products to do with electrical and automation, machinery, as well as industrial products, and services from financial, IT, technical services, and development of projects. Insofar as the business verticals are concerned, again, a very comprehensive list. I will not bore you and read the entire content. Suffice to say that if there is a need today in any part of Africa, there is a possibility, a very distinct possibility, that L&T would be able to service that need. Some of the projects, so if you've been constructing major projects for over 75 years, there is a huge list to read from. Some of the pictures that are over here, for those of you that flew in from Bombay or Mumbai, there's Mumbai's International Airport. The ones that came in from Delhi, there's Delhi's International Airport. Both of these were constructed by us. We are building every single type of critical infrastructure, nuclear power plants, hydroelectric power plants, and various manufacturing facilities, including that for the various power sector equipment. As far as the international footprint is concerned, so we are extremely, extremely strong today in the Middle East, and of course, India, which is our base, has been extended to the countries around, which are the SAARC countries. We're also extending this footprint into Africa over the last few years, as well as in Southeast Asia. Some of the projects that you see over here, including the Salalah Airport in Oman, were completed in record time. The super specialty hospital for NMC in Abu Dhabi, a fabrication facility in Oman where we're building offshore platforms and drilling rigs, and several power transmission and distribution facilities to connect and energize countries across the world. Among the quality initiatives that allow us to be the leader that we are compliant with every known and required quality initiative across the world, and have been recognized and honored at several fora and across several platforms. Our construction skills training institutes, so this is an initiative that I have promised our brothers in Africa that we will implement across the continent, will allow us to train and improve and develop the capabilities of Africa. As a company, we are committed not to utilize Indian labor in Africa, quite contrary to what some of our people from across the borders are doing. L&T has a long history of collaboration with Japanese organizations. Mitsubishi Hitachi Power Systems and us, we have a joint venture where we manufacture steam turbines. We are today engaged in a very, very large way in constructing the Western Dedicated Freight Corridor, building special steel bridges, executing smart cities, and even building smart museums. We are in partnership with Marubeni for power and transportation projects in Bangladesh. And for our smart world and communications, we are sourcing a lot of our equipment from Hitachi, as well as other leading Japanese companies. The power transmission and distribution business is in discussion with Mitsubishi for upcoming transmission and distribution projects. JICA has recognized and supported L&T right through because we have delivered on time, we have delivered as promised and as committed. It is this partnership that has allowed us, to a very large extent, to extend our presence across the world. These are the countries where we already exist. So you can see we are present in most countries today. Specifically in Africa, we are executing projects both in the north and the east, and have recently started executing a project in the southern part of Africa as well. We have a firm belief that Africa can utilize and benefit from L&T's expertise. And when we are teamed up with our Japanese partners, we make an unbeatable combination. Just to list the various positives that we can clearly identify, the strong bilateral ties that exist between India and Japan extend for a very, very long time. These are ripe, these are ready, we need to exploit them, we need to move forward. The Japanese technological expertise, enough has been said, and no more needs to be said. Japan is an established innovator. They lead on technology. That's a huge strength. India's experience and presence, both directly as well as through its diaspora across Africa. People respect us as teachers, as professors, as good people. We need to exploit that. We need to move forward, build on that. Both our governments, our honorable prime ministers, have committed to concessional funding for the continent. What we need to do is to translate that into action and move forward. Our common vision towards the development of Africa, our existing technologies, and the ability to transfer experience should allow it to be possible. Simple steps, not gone into details. There are some projects that were led by the Honorable Joint Secretary of our Ministry of External Affairs. They're under discussion. I've not listed them because there are far too many to be listed. But simple steps, this is what I've identified in the simple flowchart. We need to identify transformational projects, and this is probably a key word. It doesn't have to be a commercially viable, attractive project. Even though we are a private company, making money for shareholders is my first mission, I agree. However, it is transformational projects that will leave a legacy, what we will be remembered for, and what this partnership will actually bring and contribute. So we need to identify those. It could be done jointly. We could bring projects to the table. There are very, very senior and experienced people in this room and outside who can advise us and help us go forward. Formation of project-specific SPVs. The reason why this is important is, again, going back to the first point. Profit-making is not going to be the primary motive. So it's only an SPV which will allow us to function without looking at just the profit. Conducting joint feasibility studies. While feasibility studies could be available, there are enough experts in Japan and in India that can go through the whole thing, ensure that this is viable, and then move forward on that. Have dedicated project financing mechanisms. This is important. Identify, move forward. I heard the leaders from JBIC, from JICA, confirm that there is a possibility. We are in discussion with Japanese companies over the last month and a half, 2 months, and there is a clear, very, very clear synergy that exists in the thought process. So have this whole thing worked out clearly. Execute these identified projects, hopefully by Indian contractors in consortium with Japanese companies. Indian presence, which exists, Japanese technology, which exists. We bring it together, and we have a win-win-win for the Asia-Africa growth corridor. With that, I'd like to thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sika. Then we'd like to invite the last speaker in the session. So I'd like to invite Mr. K. Ram Kumar, Senior Vice President, Finance, Ashok Leyland, Hinduja Group. Mr. Kumar, please.
Good afternoon, all of you. I am from Ashok Leyland, India. We are the second largest commercial vehicle manufacturer in India with global presence, virtually in all continents except perhaps Australia. Our company is a $3.5 billion company, and it belongs to Hinduja Group. About Hinduja Group, it's a privately owned by Hinduja family, and it is a more than 100 years group with diversified interests. And the group has interests all over the world and in over 35 countries. And in terms of the business, and of course the group philosophy is to work so that we can give. It means that we want to give back to the society through working and by whatever we earn from that. In terms of the business verticals, you will find us to be diversified in automotive, chemicals, banking, IT, power, media, real estate, healthcare, project development, and trading. I am from automotive verticals, and Ashok Leyland is the flagship company of the group in automotive vertical. In terms of on Ashok Leyland, our aim is to be in the global top 10 in M&HCV trucks, 7.5 tons and above, GVW. And in the case of this thing to be in the case of buses, we want to be on the globe top 5 in M&HCV buses. In fact, there is no Indian. In fact, we believe that we have touched the lives of all Indians. During their lifetime, they would have used our vehicle in one form or the other. We are a 66-year-old company, and with the equity participation from Leyland Motors UK, and now it is part of the Hinduja Group. And we have several firsts to our credit. Any new technology, any new item that got introduced in the commercial vehicle space, it would have been introduced by us. We consider ourselves as technology leaders that way. And we have huge in-house designing capabilities. We have a massive R&D facility with, I must say that we are employing more than 1,200 people in the R&D facility. Out of them, 800 are qualified engineers. And many of the facilities that we have are all available only in our company in this part of the Asia, excluding Japan. And our manufacturing plants are state of art, including the latest addition is at Pantnagar, North India, almost 7-8 years back. In our international foray, we have established a plant in Ras Al Khaimah in UAE, and we also have a plant in the name of Optare in UK at Leeds. We are the leaders in electrical vehicle manufacturers in UK. Since our foundation, our company has been profitable. Not even a single year in which we missed our profitability. And we have always been consistently growing. And of course, commercial vehicle is a cyclical industry, and we know how to sail through in the storm. In terms of the bouquet of products that we offer, they are there in trucks, buses, defense, and engines for various applications. Our vehicles can withstand, are built to serve the customers in climates like Sahara to very cold conditions. For example, our vehicles saw action in Kargil war also. In the international market, we have 5 clusters in the Middle East, Latin America, CIS, Africa, and ASEAN. This is our footprint all across, and we export to almost 35 countries in the world. You will find a lot of African countries in this. This represents the major international orders that we have obtained over a period of time, which includes many African countries. You can ask why so many orders from African countries? Because we believe in making our presence felt in homogeneous countries. Because there is a huge technological gap between India and advanced countries like US or Europe. There the challenge is the volume itself is low, margins are low, and the technology level is totally different. So there is no point in concentrating on that. But we have a huge market in our own Asia, like SAARC countries, Middle East, and also Africa. Africa represents full of opportunities, not only for the rest of the world, but for us alone, for us also. And we have been with the African customers throughout. And the success story for us has been in identifying the specific opportunities which are there and providing not only trucks or buses, but the transport solutions as a whole. The Africa is growing rapidly. All of us are aware of that. And the earlier speakers also are highlighting about the growth which is being seen in agriculture, manufacturing, and resources. All this means that it requires a lot of infrastructure built up. It's a virgin country, so it requires a lot of infrastructure. But Africa can benefit from the experience of other countries. For example, in US in early 50s and 60s, they grew on the back of the investment they made in roads. Similarly, in China, late 70s and early 80s, they invested in roads and they grew. Similarly, in India, from 90s, we invested heavily into infrastructure and we gained. Any investment in infrastructure means that it will have a multiplier effect in terms of growth. And that is the experience, that is the path which Africa has to follow. And we have a role to play in infrastructure because we provide connectivity. The major problem in Africa is underdeveloped public transport systems. And no infrastructure development can be complete without providing a proper infrastructure, public transport infrastructure. So there is a huge issue there, and our objective is to provide public transport solutions. There are three deliverables which we are talking about. One is providing competitive, efficient, and durable products built for Africa. I should not be selling something which I produce for my market, because we have always seen in transport space, any vehicle which is built for that specific market, for that particular application, will provide the maximum productivity and improve the viability for the end customer. When you take the end customer's viability as the centerpiece, then everything else falls in place. That is what we believe. Second is build local capability to run transport system. It is not that we sell and forget. We need to provide the supporting infrastructure, the skill sets required to run it profitably. Facilitate finance solutions to enable transport systems startup. One of the main problem in Africa is the finance solutions. They need funding. See, when there is a challenge, what is challenge for one person becomes an opportunity for another. So there, as earlier speakers were saying, India can provide funding solution only up to a particular point. And I think as far as our sector is concerned, we have reached that particular point. So there is a need for external funding, which will help the African countries to take care of their demand through appropriate funding solutions, so that it creates a win-win situation. These are all the vehicles which we have built for Africa. All these vehicles have been customized, keeping in mind the road conditions, infrastructure conditions, which are prevalent all across Africa, so that they are efficient and very productive for their respective applications. These are all the features, which specifically engineered for urban transport. See, very important that we need to introduce new features, to the end customers for customer delight. At the same time, this must be cost-effective solutions. Second thing is building local capability to run complete transport solutions. In many of these areas, we have seen that the skill sets available are not sufficient to handle. You can give a very good vehicle, but if you do not impart the necessary skill sets on the people who are going to operate it on a day-to-day basis, then the investment will go waste. So we are providing the necessary assistance in this regard on each of the areas. Normally, I must confess that we do not provide this to our own Indian customers, but we are walking that extra mile to take care of our African counterparts. And in the case of facilitating financial support, this is where the Japanese guys can definitely help. Where, for example, in India, the Exim Bank is doing an extremely good job. We must thank Exim Bank for that. And we have, a few $1 billion of exports is what we have done, and we need support here. And in terms of Ashok Leyland's presence in Africa, it is present in over 24 countries, selling around 1,400 vehicles. And we have been a pioneer in this area, and our counterparts, our customers have held Ashok Leyland in high esteem, and our guys in marketing have done an extremely good job in forging relationships, long-term relationships with the African guys. And in terms of local assembly, we believe in creating infrastructure in the respective places, like the way, in Ras Al Khaimah, where in Middle East we have set up a shop. We are also planning to do a similar assembly in Kenya, because it will help the local guys to get employment, to promote investment. We can, once a factory comes in, all other supporting infrastructure will come, suppliers will start supplying, it creates an all-round thing. So we are not taking a restricted view. We want a presence on a long-term basis in the countries where we operate, because there is a huge opportunity. So in terms of spread, in Africa, our current spread is around 47% with almost 26 countries. And in terms of dealer network, we have excellent network in all the East African countries, and similarly South Africa and West Africa as well. So we are present almost in most of the parts. And when in Kenya, we will establish a company, and similarly we have a company in Cote d'Ivoire also, and as well as in Nigeria. So these are all the major projects that we have won in Africa, and we believe in operating in those only countries which do not have any sanctions or anything. And these are all with government-to-government cooperation and with Exim Bank support. And these are all some of the pictures on the Lagos BRT Nigeria, and this is on Zumulian and Ghana. And these are all vehicles for other applications. These are for Kenyan local government. And these are all buses supplied to various, because in worker transportation and urban transportation and this thing, we have a very strong foothold everywhere, wherever we operate. I must say that these are all case studies where, we have developed solutions, financial solutions. See, ultimately, we are selling an asset which is a productive asset. They pay for themselves. There is no need for others to pitch in. So the solution lies in ring fencing the cash flows so that the lender gets his money back. And for this, there is a compelling need to forge a relationship between the lending banks and the local banks. That is very important. Today, that is what is lacking. And this is another BRTS Lagos, where Ashok Leyland played a very important role and in getting this. And this is another one in Ghana. And in Delhi, you might have seen our vehicles, CNG fueled vehicles, running everywhere, the state of the art. And in terms of partnership, these are all some of the current projects which are under execution and in pipeline. And most of them are all with the support of Exim Bank. We are doing that. And what our customer seek is total transportation solutions, long-term financing facility, 8 to 10 years. It perfectly matches with the Japanese this thing. And of course, cost-effective funding and moratorium for initial periods and repayment. So our experience has been good, and it is for us to exploit this opportunity on for productive this thing for both the countries as a win-win solution. Thank you.